think I'm going to go ahead and get started. It's wonderful to have all of you here with us today. My name is Julie Evans. I'm the CEO of Project Tomorrow. We're here to talk about how to use your Speak Up data to inform your digital learning plans. This is a very special seminar that we are doing exclusively for our Speak Up districts. So let me give you a little bit of a disclaimer just right here when we get started. This is really based on a workshop that I have been doing with school districts, with schools, with states all around the country for the last couple of years. That workshop is about a three and a half hour workshop where we get really nitty gritty into the data, lots of hands-on interactive activities. This is sort of a digested version of that. So this is going to be a seminar, mini version of the leadership workshop that I usually do. So there'll be parts of it that I will tell you, we're not going to go too much deeper into this, but at the end, I'll give you some other ideas, some additional things that'll help you as part of this. We are definitely going to leave some time at the end for your questions, your comments, your thoughts. And so that's why I also thought it'd be nice for us to start building up our Speak Up Professional Learning Network. So if you've not already shared your name and district name in the chat box, please go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're going to start off with a little bit of a refresher course, let's call it that. A little bit of Speak Up 101, just to make sure we all are on the same playing field in terms of thinking about Speak Up. Then I'm going to share with you the key trends that we're watching. Maybe they're the same things you're watching as well. And then we're going to dive into the data itself. I'm going to share with you how we go through the process of interpreting the Speak Up data and translating it into actionable knowledge that has context. But then as a very special opportunity for you, I'm going to share with you what we call is the data to information equals knowledge process. That's the process that we use. So we'll go through a couple little scenarios with that to give you a feel for how that works. It is something that I truly believe you can replicate in your schools and districts using your Speak Up data. And then I created something very special for all of us today. Quite often, folks will say to me, okay, Julie, there's wonderful data that we've collected from Speak Up, but what if I only have 20 minutes? Or what if a principal only has 20 minutes? It could be 15, it could be 20. What are the most important questions to look at? And so I did pull that together for you. This is a first ever, so we'll kind of see how this works. I'm also going to share with you some other ways that we can support your efforts. And then we've definitely, as I said, left time for your questions, your comments, your thoughts, what you're thinking about. And then, of course, planning for Speak Up 2019 and 20. We also have with us today Jenny Hassert, who is our amazing operations manager for Speak Up. I know many of you are already familiar with Jenny. And so look for Jenny to post some notes or some other ideas that she may have, or if I skip over something that she thinks is important, she may actually put that in the chat box as well. We also have with us Pilar Comparian, who is our special projects manager. Some of you may have been already in conversation with Pilar about different things, but Pilar is getting more involved with our Speak Up efforts here as we're continuing to grow. So both of them are with us here today as well. Okay, just as a reminder, Project Tomorrow, we're an education nonprofit group. We've been supporting K-12 education since 1996. Our overall mission is to make sure that today's students are well prepared for the future. Do they have the skills and experiences they need to be successful in college, in career, in the workforce, as a citizen? We have a particular bias. We believe that the STEAM resources, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics type resources are one of the very best ways to support student preparation for college, career, citizenry success. But of course, the hallmark of all of our work today is the Speak Up Research Project for Digital Learning. In that, we are supporting the development of new leadership capacities within K-12 schools and districts by helping schools and districts better understand how to use the views of their stakeholders. Now, I know that you're all familiar with Speak Up, but we'll just run through a couple of the key components so that you don't miss anything through the process today. You know, we've been doing this since 2003. It's 100% facilitated through schools and districts. We create a suite of online surveys and make those available to you to collect feedback from your stakeholders. Any type of school is eligible to participate, and you get back all of your locally collected data with also state and national data to use as benchmarks. And of course, if you are a district, you can look at your district aggregated data as well as your school by school analysis. And of course, as always, this is 100% a free service provided by Project Tomorrow. We believe very strongly that your instructional dollars should be used to support instruction. We have some fabulous partners that we work with, so I'm going to give a shout out just to those partners while we're all here today. Many of these organizations you are aware of, you may be members of, you may follow them as well. We are so proud of all of their support. Now, in terms of the questions, let's get a little bit more into the details here, because this is going to be important as we get into the analysis. So every year on the Speak Up survey, we ask a number of different types of questions, most of them around the use of technology to support teaching and learning. But the questions do vary by audience. They also are the types of questions that can change over time. So, for example, in terms of the audience specific, we ask teachers about their needs for professional development. We ask students about their interest in STEAM career fields. We ask all the respondents to talk to us about how they are not only just using these different types of emerging technologies to support teaching, learning, career preparation, but also what they think about them. Do they value them? Do they wish for other things? What is interesting in our lineup of our standard survey questions is that in many cases, we have been asking these questions every year since we started. So that creates a really interesting longitudinal database where we can do some comparatives over time and look at the trend analysis associated with that. In addition to that, though, each year we ask a series of new questions that move in and out. They tend to be a little bit more thematic, they tend to be topical, they might be timely in their interest. And so for the new questions for last year's Speak Up data, the surveys that were launched in October, we had a number of new question themes. Some of them you may be aware of because they may have been on the surveys that you used with your stakeholders, and maybe some of them you missed, to be honest with you, because you weren't focusing in on that particular audience. But we did ask some new questions about school safety and social emotional learning. We expanded upon the questions that we've always been asking about computer programming and coding, as well as STEAM, and also about student online behavior concerns, lots of interest around that. We dived a little bit deeper into professional development, particularly about the preferences that teachers have for professional development, what their interests are, and what some of the challenges are that they see with professional development. We had a really interesting question. It was a timely, topical, thematic type question about students' experiences with YouTube. In particular, how they are using YouTube as a learning modality, and what that means for them in terms of their expectations for having access to YouTube during their school day. We also asked, and I'm still doing the analysis on this, so I'll have to come back to you with some of this insight, but a really interesting question about teacher referrals of digital content. So are teachers referring digital content to their peers? Are they taking referrals from their colleagues? And what types of quality determinants are driving that sort of referral process? So really interesting when we think about the dynamics around the adoption of digital content and the comfort associated with using digital content. So there's really an interesting set of new questions. Again, some of these questions we will see continue within this upcoming year. Other ones we may replace with some other new topical themes. A key thing to understand with the Speak Up questions is that it is very strategic from our standpoint that we ask questions across what we call 3 vectors. We ask questions about activities, we ask questions about attitudes, and we ask questions about aspirations. And that is on all of the different types of surveys. So let me explain that in a little bit more detail, because again, this is a foundation thing for understanding how to analyze the data. So activities. What are your stakeholders doing using technology? So typical questions are, how are you using mobile devices for learning? How often are you using videos in your classroom? What is your home internet status? These type of more static questions are what we actually typically see on most surveys. So whether those are state surveys or even surveys that districts are developing themselves, in many cases it tends to be focused on what are you doing, how often are you doing it, where are you doing it, when are you doing it, all those types of activity-driven questions. We like those questions. We actually, though, also like questions about attitudes and questions about aspirations. So attitudes are around the topics of how do you value these type of learning experiences. So samples of those are, what are the benefits of digital learning to you? What determines quality? For a parent, what concerns you about your child's technology use? And then aspirations are more the future looking type questions. So what would you like to do? What do you wish you could do? What do you wish the environment would look like? And so for that, we ask, for example, teachers about their wish list for professional development. We ask parents, what do you think is the best way for your child to be prepared for the future? And we ask all the respondents, what type of technology do you think would have the greatest impact on student achievement if it was in your dream or ultimate school? So 3 buckets of questions. It's one of the things that makes the Speak Up project a little bit unique, because we are very strategic in developing questions that fall into each one of those buckets, that because they give us the opportunity to triangulate the data across those 3 sectors. So rather than just looking at activities, which just gives us a snapshot in time, or just looking at attitudes, or just asking about the wish list, we ask all 3, and then it is in the translation of that data and the triangulation of that data where we actually see brings forth the most actionable knowledge for you at a school, at a district, for a state Department of Education, or actually for the nation in terms of the entire K-12 education ecosystem. So this is a key component, a key differentiator around the way we approach our research. Now, the other thing that's probably interesting to you to understand, and you're probably already doing this as well, is the ways that schools and districts tell us they use their Speak Up data. So we have summarized these into 5 key ways or buckets in terms of how districts and school leaders are using their data. The first one is around teacher professional development. That's both to inform the way they are facilitating teacher professional development, and also as content for teacher professional development, to make sure that their teachers understand, in particular, what the needs are of their students or what the aspirations are of parents. Speaking of parents, many districts use their Speak Up data to engage their community, either engaging their community in conversations about the future, or to validate decisions that have been made, or to get their buy-in on new initiatives. And so the data can be really effective in terms of community engagement. Now, lots of districts tell us that they use their data either for decision-making or for evaluating outcomes on the back end. So they've made a decision around a particular type of initiative, and now they want to see if the valuation of that initiative is coming through from their parents, from their teachers, from their students, from their principals, whoever it might be. In the same way, they are also looking at evaluating outcomes. So we have a really interesting question on the survey that asks students about how they are using their mobile devices to support learning. In many ways, that's an evaluation of outcomes type question, because as more and more districts, probably many of you here with us today, have implemented mobile devices, you want to know, are they being used the way we envisioned them to be used? Or are students doing interesting and creative things, all in the service of learning, of course, using those devices? And so understanding that is a way to evaluate outcomes. One of the most interesting ways that I think school and district leaders are using their Speak Up data, though, is around funding development. So the idea of using that data to build a case, either within a grant application. We have many districts, for example, that are going to use their Speak Up data within the Department of Education's EIR grants that are coming due in a couple weeks, or local foundation grants, corporate grants. as well as to raise different types of revenue in your local community. Over the last 15 years, we have had many districts that tell us that it was their Speak Up data that allowed them to go out into their community and build a case for maybe a parcel tax or a bond measure or some type of local revenue development process to drive better investments or more investments in technology in their schools. So think about the ways that you are currently using the Speak Up data, and there may be other ways that you can start thinking about it for use as well. As we know, for us, it's all about making sure that the data can impact your ability to make the very best decisions and plans you can to service your needs, to address your goals. And so that's really why we put all this together for you. As we know, and many of you have probably seen this image from me before, you know, we can both be looking at the same picture, but maybe we see different things. And I often think about that when we're talking about the use of technology in our schools today. So some of us, for example, might look at this image and we might see a face. It looks like it has deep set eyes and a high forehead, a very strong nose and chin. Some of us may see what looks like a woman in a long dress with a fur coat kind of swishing through leaves. It's the same situation as that we have with our different stakeholders. Some of us may see both of those images. Some of us might not see either of those images, or we might just see one of them. So it's important for us to always be thinking about not what our perspective is on the state of instructional technology or the use of technology within learning today, but what is the viewpoints, the sight line, shall we say, from our different stakeholders. And so we believe very strongly that the Speak Up data gives you an opportunity to improve our collective sight about what our stakeholders are thinking about. So next, what I want to do is I want to share with you some of the key trends that we're watching. I want to take you through the list. It is driving a lot of the analysis that we're doing, but it also might be interesting to you because it might resonate with some of the things that you're doing. Let me say again, if you have any sort of questions as we're going through this, please go ahead and pop those in the chat box. I will try and address them from time to time as they are coming up. But otherwise, we will definitely get to them at the end, okay? So just keep that in mind. All right, on to the trends. So here's just a lineup of some of the key trends that we're looking at. And again, this is based on our analysis not only of the current data that we've collected over the past couple of months, but also looking at that longitudinal basis and being able to put around that the context of where we are from a standpoint of the digital learning ecospaces that we're all creating. No surprise here, people are increasingly linking the use of technology to the development of students' global skills. So how can we better leverage some of these digital tools to make sure that students are developing the types of college and career-ready skills that we know that the colleges want to see and that employers want to see? Tied in with that are a lot of these new learning models, whether that is blended learning or online learning, flipped learning, competency-based learning, mobile learning. Not only are we seeing higher interest across all of those different types of modalities, but much more implementation than we ever saw before. And we track that as part of the Speak Up data set. Now, one that's near and dear to my heart is this idea of how students are using their access to technology outside of school to self-direct learning. And I've done a lot of extensive writing about this purposeful learning that's happening outside of school. What we're increasingly seeing is that experience that the students are having outside of school, in fact, influences the way they're thinking about their in-school experiences. And so if we are not paying attention, we being the collective we, to what students are doing outside of school, sometimes we miss the cues, miss the notes about what their expectations are or where their disappointments are with the way technology is being used in their school life. I'm going to come back to the next one in a moment. Increasingly, we are finding that one about digital parent. Hold that thought for a moment. Increasingly, what we are finding is that more and more school boards in particular, but also school and district leaders, are looking to articulate what the tangible outcomes are of digital learning beyond engagement. You know, folks, for a long time, we all talked about engagement as a key outcome of using technology. It still is. And engagement is a very important, particularly research-based component of student learning. However, again, I'll go back to school boards. For many school boards who have made investments in technology, they are looking for something more than, shall we say, shiny eyes and smiley faces when the students are using their tablet or when they have the opportunity to do an animation or simulation as part of a science class. I'm going to be speaking at the National School Boards Association meeting the weekend after this. And I know that I will be spending a lot of time talking with school board members about how to evaluate those sort of tangible outcomes. And so that's also an important component here that we see coming out of the Speak Up research. You know, we're all talking about connectivity, whether or not we have enough connectivity, internet bandwidth in our schools, or whether our students have access at home. And that's increasingly becoming a social justice issue of great importance. I wrote extensively last spring, maybe some of you had seen this report that we released, about the connection between leadership and digital effectiveness. And I'm increasingly hearing that in my focus groups with teachers, my work that I'm doing with superintendents, that the idea of being an effective leader today in our schools and districts includes inherently digital learning leadership. It is not off on the side. It isn't someone else's job. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that for the conversation around education transformation, in many ways, digital learning is a metaphor for that. So the process and the processes that we have been going through with the adoption and adaptation of technology within the learning process is really just part and parcel of an overall education transformation to again go back to making sure that we are preparing these students for the future that is ahead of them. Now let me go back to that meeting the new digital parent with their new demands and aspirations. We've been following this one for quite a while. You probably have been also. As new parents are coming into our schools, younger parents, parents of elementary students, we are seeing that they have markedly different expectations, experiences, demands, shall we say, for the role of technology in their students' lives. It's based on their own experiences. It's based on having grown up using technology themselves, that they use it at work, they use it for social interaction, and in their learning world, technology was part of that experience. So when we disaggregate our parent data and look based on age of parent or age of child associated with that parent, we see some very significant differences between this new digital parent and the more traditional parent. So to that goal, to that subject, I want to get a little bit into some of the Speak Up data and show you how we go through the process of translating parent data into actionable knowledge. And we're going to do this around district to home communications, the idea of parent communications. Now we know in many, many districts, different district leaders or schools as well are adopting all kinds of different types of digital tools to help with school to home or district to home communications. Some of that is social media, some of that is using mobile apps or different types of texting apps that are associated with that. Still, there's use of newspapers, TV, broadcast, as well as print newsletters that go home, the websites, those type of things. But what's increasingly of interest is what are the expectations of parents for communications, and do they have preferences around their learning, their communication styles? So a little bit of data here, and kind of flow this with me, folks, because I'm going to show you how it all comes back to this actionable knowledge conversation. So we're going to use this as one of our little vignettes today. So using national data, this is brand new national data, 44% of parents of school-age children told us this year that they are very satisfied with the crisis alert communications coming from their school district. An additional 28% checked the box that said satisfied. So pretty high numbers in terms of satisfaction. This is one of those glass half full, half empty type conversations. Sometimes when I talk with districts, they love that 44% number if their district number is near that. Others look at it and say, I'm not content with that. I want much higher levels of satisfaction. We understand that. We also asked administrators, so what tools do you think are most effective for communicating crisis and alert information to parents? I just pulled 2 social media ones. We poll on a number of different things if you've taken a look at that question. So about a third of administrators said that Facebook and Twitter were an effective tool for crisis and alert communications. Parents don't necessarily agree with that, which is kind of interesting. It's closer to about a quarter of parents that say that Facebook and Twitter are effective communication tools. So we see a little bit of a disconnect there between the administrators' valuation and parents' valuation. So that's interesting to take a look at. But we also poll parents on their use of social media. And this is where it starts to get a little complicated, because what we find is that parents are using Facebook frequently, not as much on Twitter, though we actually see a little bit of a gender differentiation on Twitter and also on Facebook. But we definitely see that they are on these type of platforms, maybe not to the level that administrators think they are, though. And in fact, when we ask parents, so what are your preferences for the most effective crisis alert communication tools? Number 1 and above is the auto phone message. That works whether it is coming in for a snow day or something more nefarious that's happening on campus. Parents also have been warming up to this idea of a text message to their mobile device, as well as push notifications coming out through the district's mobile app and mobile app updates. And then you see where Facebook and Twitter come in. So Facebook and Twitter are important in this conversation, but they don't represent the aspirations, the high-end aspirations of the parents. Now, as we look at this, there's a couple different things that jump out at us in terms of what it means. Most notably, it's all again in this triangulation of the data. So we ask parents about their social media use, we ask them about their satisfaction with communications, we ask them about their preferred method of communications. So we hit activities, attitudes, and aspirations. And then looking at those all together gives us a fuller picture. If we only looked at the social media use by parents, we may draw the wrong conclusion about how parents want to be communicated with. And that's my point. So where's the actionable knowledge that comes out of this? Well, here again, with this little vignette using the national data, here's some of the things that I would interpret, I would take away from this analysis of this data. The first one is parents want information pushed to them rather than having to look it up themselves. We see that not only in the crisis alert communications, but even in the general information type communications. So parents no longer are as keen on having to go to a website or a school portal to look up information as much as they want that information pushed out to them. But we know that no single tool or communication mode is going to fit all parents. People want customization of their communications experiences, just like they want customization of their shopping experiences, their banking experiences, their dining experiences, and actually what they want for their children as well from a learning standpoint. We were impressed this year with the high valuation on mobile apps from the district, and also particular features from mobile apps. And the other thing that we take away from this analysis is that personal social media use does not necessarily mean that that is the way that parents want to be communicated with about certain types of communications. That's a big aha moment with many school and district leaders when I have been presenting this information. They are making the assumption, because they're looking at it through their lens, remember our image with the face and the woman walking, that if parents are on Facebook, then that's the way they want to be communicated with. My parent focus groups tell me that parents like the opportunity to use social media tools, but they're differentiating those tools across different types of relationships. And that also this idea that the administrators and the parents may have different perspectives is something that's important throughout the Speak Up data, is to look at not just what one single audience says, but how does that question on a parent survey, which is a very similar question to an administrator survey, how do those answers compare? And so that's why when we talk with folks about participating in Speak Up, we'll say, okay, well, it may be great that you're collecting data from parents, but you may also want to poll these other audiences. And that transcends all of the different surveys. Okay, so that was my key trends and our first little vignette in how to look at the data, maybe a little bit differently. Now we're going to get deep into this, folks. So buckle up, here we go. We're going to start off talking about using Speak Up data as a model. I'm going to share with you this data to information equals knowledge process. And then if you only have 20 minutes, which we hope you have more, but if you only have 20 minutes, what are the key questions to take a look at? So here we go, diving in, deep end. Okay, let's talk in the big level of what type of data you and other education leaders in your school or district are using. No surprise here, there's all kinds of different data that education leaders have. In many ways, we are flooded by data. You have assessment data, you have attendance data, disciplinary data. If you're doing observations, you've collected qualitative data that way. You may have participation or usage data, particularly coming from your digital tools. And then you may also have feedback data. Feedback data is the bucket that Speak Up sits in. We are not collecting data about attendance. We're not collecting assessment data. Our piece of this puzzle is feedback data. We believe that all of this data is important and valuable and can be used in different ways. Sometimes people use data in the wrong way or for the wrong purpose. That's part of the larger workshop that I do. Remember, I told you that 3.5-hour workshop. We get into that type of stuff. Today, we're just going to focus in on some of this feedback data. You know what feedback data is, even outside of Speak Up. That's where maybe you're doing other surveys. Maybe you sit down with a group of parents or with students. You may have a parent advisory council. You may have a student advisory council. You may have community partners that come in and give you feedback. Lots of times it has to do with these type of questions. What are you doing? What do you like? What do you want? What do you need? Feedback from your stakeholders. There's pros and cons of using feedback data, quite honestly, to inform your planning. Again, this is something we go into a lot more detail than what we can do today, folks. But the pros include authenticity. If your data collection of your feedback data is wide enough that you're not just getting the squeaky wheel parent or the teacher that always signs up to be part of that advisory group, it can create an opportunity for you to get some really interesting new and different perspectives. It also can be used as an engagement tool. I mentioned that before in terms of parental engagement. It also gives you the opportunity to really meaningfully validate either your initiatives or your approach. Too often what we see is that school districts or school leaders may rely upon the voices of a couple of people. It could be a couple of members of their staff. It could be a couple of principals who they've known for a long time. It could be parents that have the opportunity to spend time in the school as a room parent or as an advisor to an activity. Getting beyond that, being able to collect larger quantities of feedback data, such as what we do with Speak Up, gives you the opportunity to validate a particular approach that you're taking, or a hunch, or an assumption, or even a mythology, or even dispel that mythology if it still exists. It also provides an opportunity for you to very proactively and tangibly demonstrate to your stakeholders that you are interested in their opinion, that you are interested in listening to them. Now, there also are some cons. Sometimes all those different perspectives are too many perspectives. And it's difficult to figure out, how do we interpret all of this? How do we pull it together? It also, outside of the shock and awe, is what I call it, with some of the feedback data you might receive, outside of that, it can feel flat. And you don't necessarily, none of us are necessarily trained from an education standpoint to understand how to always interpret data beyond that. It also can set up an opportunity which could be a positive opportunity or it could be a negative opportunity, to create responses to that listening. So if you go with a process that says, I want to be transparent within my community, I want to listen to stakeholders, and I want to bring their views in, you also then have to, in some cases, set it up that you're going to give them a response back. I will often counsel school and district leaders, and I'm doing this with you here today as well, in terms of their Speak Up data, is that if you are going to go out to your community, be it your teachers, your principals, your students, your parents, your community members, and ask for their feedback, they deserve an opportunity to know, one, why were you collecting that feedback? What are you going to do with it? And then what was the responses? That does not necessarily mean you have to share all of your Speak Up data, but putting together a thoughtful plan for how are we going to use this data, and then what am I going to share back out with the community, can be a wonderful engagement tool, can be a wonderful way to reinforce all the pros associated with feedback data. But sometimes it feels like this, right? So how do we go? You're going to love this. How do we go from this to the calm, the sereneness of using data? Well, we've got some answers here for you. What we like to talk about is about creating that actionable knowledge, to getting beyond the shock and awe of looking at a particular statistic and saying, I don't know what to do with this, to really being able to use your Speak Up data to inform your plans going forward. So that's what we're going to do in this next part. We're going to talk about this data to information knowledge process that we have created, that we use internally to look at our data. We do this to interpret the data for the national reports. We also are doing some of this work with states and school districts as well. So again, I'm giving you a mini version of this 3.5-hour workshop on this. We're going to go through one scenario. In the actual workshop, when I'm doing this within districts, we actually use your local data as part of the scenario, but I've put together some national data to help us with this. Okay, so no surprise, the name data to information equals knowledge process involves data, information, and knowledge. What we do with it is we take the data and we translate that data into information statements. Data by itself is not actionable. It needs to be translated. It needs to be interpreted. We then take those information statements, align them to your goals, and create action plans that meet those goals specifically for you and hopefully lead to better decisions and plans going forward. So I'm going to now take you through a scenario using some of the Speak Up data, and I think it'll become clear to you how this process works. Our goal with this is to give you a little bit of a starting point. And I'm going to give you some homework, just tell you that right up front, so that you can then take this process and overlay it on some of your data to get more value out of that. So the first step in the process is to align the steps to your goals. So you have to know what your goals are to get started. Now, these may have been goals that you first thought about when you decided to participate in Speak Up and have your respondents be part of the process. Or they may be goals that have happened over the school year. We are fully aware of the fact that sometimes some of your goals change over time. But the starting point is to articulate or understand those goals. So this is just a little fictitious district scenario that I put in place. It may apply to some of you that are here with us today, or you may have other goals that you can overlay here. But this little fictitious district scenario goes like this. The district wants to imp a one-to-one mobile device program across all their schools. Might be Chromebooks, might be laptops. In elementary schools, we're still seeing a lot of tablets that are being used. The district knows, based on past experience, and again, this is experiential, that for this one-to-one mobile device rollout to be successful, the teachers, one, must be receptive to the idea of using these devices in the classroom and comfortable with that usage. I have seen way too many environments, and I'm sure you all have too, where we have pushed something out to our teachers before they were ready, and then it was difficult to get them on board. So in this fictitious scenario, this particular made-up district is interested in making sure the teachers are receptive. So the goal then is to use the Speak Up data from teachers to evaluate the readiness of the teachers for this program and to be able to develop an action plan if they are not ready for moving forward. Okay, so the second step in the process is identifying the right data to use. Now, this is something that I talk with school and district leaders about all the time. There is a lot of data that you have collected through the Speak Up process. Some of that may be more valuable for you at different times or around different goals. So rather than take the entire data set and go, okay, what do I do with this? You need to identify specific questions and just look at that data. That's my big tip for you here today. You don't have to eat the whole thing at once. We can break this into snack-sized bites, let's call it that. So under this fictitious scenario, this is a really good question for this district to take a look at. It's question 17 on this year's teacher survey. Excuse me. What do you need? The question reads like this. What do you need to more efficiently and effectively integrate digital content, tools, and resources into daily instruction in your classroom? This is one of our standard questions. We ask this question every year. So you can feel confident that if you ask this question in 2018, you can ask it again in 19, you can ask it in 20, you can ask it in 21, and you can start to get a nice longitudinal data set to see if it changes over time. It is a direct statement as to what teachers are telling you they need to move forward. Here's the national data from this past year. 61% teachers told us it's about planning time, 50% said it's about PD, 49% said they need mobile devices in their classroom on a one-to-one basis for their students. Another 49%, or an additional 49%, said it was about just-in-time tech support. And then a little bit less, 46% nationwide told us it's about reliable, high-quality internet connectivity. Those are the same 5, folks, that have come up for about the last 5 years. The order changes a little bit, the percentages change a little bit, but these are one of these questions that is very much your mileage is going to be different. Your data is going to look different based on what you have done, what infrastructure you have in place, and where you are in the process of using digital tools. So I pulled data that could represent a state or could represent a district, just to give you a comparison of how this data can look differently. So in this particular case, the state and or district data, the comparative set that I pulled, their teachers had a higher percentage of them were interested in planning time, and a higher percentage, significantly higher percentage, said they needed a set of mobile devices to use in the classroom. Tech support was not as important for this district. So I'm looking at this data, without necessarily knowing what's happened in the environment, is that I would say that the district has probably done a pretty good job of providing tech support. It looks like they may not have as many mobile devices as the teachers want to be able to use, but they also are looking for more planning time, which goes hand in hand with driving that comfort. So then we start to ask questions what are the different ways to interpret this data, either looking at our local data or looking at it comparatively? And then also, what other data could help us interpret this? So part of the process of identifying the data that you're going to use for your analysis is finding out where there are other questions that blend in together with the key question that you identify. So in this case, I picked for you 3 additional questions to consider, always within the context of this is that scenario of the district that wants to implement one-to-one mobile devices throughout all of their schools. So the 3 other questions that I picked, and these are the actual question numbers that are on this year's survey. One is question number 8 on the teacher survey, where we ask teachers to report on what access their students have to mobile devices in their classroom. The second one is question 22, and it's an aspirational question. You can see the first one's an activity question. We're counting something. Aspirational question. Teacher interest in professional development around mobile learning. And then an attitude question. Teacher report on their comfort with using mobile devices within students in the classroom. So you could pick question 17, question 8, question 22, question 7, and be able to use that data if you had your teachers participate. And I know many of you did that are with us today. and be able to really come forth with some good recommendations just based on looking at those 4 questions. Let me show you how that works. So for that question 8, teacher reporting on access to mobile devices in the classroom, this is the national data. About a quarter of teachers say that their students basically use their own devices in class. It's a BYOD environment. 37% say it's a one-to-one assignment, but students only get access to the devices in school. 17% say that their students can use their devices at school and at home. It's a one-to-one assignment. A quarter of teachers say they still are on a basis where they can schedule and check out devices, bring the card in when they need it. And 15% of teachers say their students have no regular access to mobile devices for use in the classroom. These numbers have obviously changed over the years, last couple of years. And again, your data is going to look different on this based on what your policies are, what your programs are, what your investments are. Teacher interest in professional development around mobile devices. We know that from our research, we know that teacher interest in any particular type of professional development, when they put it on the wish list for their PD, indicates their interest in learning more about something and their readiness to do that. If they don't check that box around mobile learning, either that means that they are already proficient and don't feel like they need training, or they are not ready for the training yet. The valuation on that has not been built. In this particular case, our national numbers tell us that 29% of teachers say they are interested in learning how to use mobile devices within instruction and how to identify and use mobile apps. And then finally, the attitude question, you can see how these start to work together, is around teacher comfort with using mobile devices with their students in the classroom. 22% of teachers told us that they are very comfortable integrating mobile devices within their classroom activities. A third said they were somewhat comfortable. 57% said they were either not sure or not comfortable. My interpretation of this data, folks, and this is question 7, asked not just about mobile devices, it asks about all sorts of different types of new instructional models, is that the teachers that say they are somewhat comfortable are probably more likely to be not comfortable than they are to be comfortable. So error on the side of caution with that number. That tells us that of our nationwide teachers, and again, you'll look at this number for your own teacher data if you polled teachers, only about a fifth of teachers are where they need to be on integrating mobile devices within instruction. Okay, so now we've got some really interesting sets of data. We know what teachers tell us that they need. We know what their access is to mobile devices in the classroom. We know about their comfort level, and we know about their interest in PD. And you have to use to look at this data, not just your local data. You have, and if you're at a district, you have school level data as well. But you also have state, or in many cases, affinity group data, plus your national data to look at. That comparative gives you the opportunity to see, so are our teachers on the same level with teachers nationwide, or teachers within our school district, or teachers within our state? Or is there something else that is different? Is there a gap there that we would like to be able to address? Now, what we do then is we create information statements that then will drive the action. So these are just a couple of the information statements. Teachers report greater need for more devices to implement in their classroom. Teachers have less access and thus less exposure to devices in the classroom than their peers nationwide. That might be the case. Teachers need additional support to build up their comfort. We then take it to this idea of going back to aligning it to our goals. Again, that little fictitious district scenario, and come up with action statements such as this. And this is all just based, folks, on looking at those 4 questions. So if it is true that your teachers have less access and thus less exposure to mobile devices in their classroom than peers nationwide, it may be important before you roll out the one-to-one for all students is to increase the availability of these devices for teacher usage first, so that they feel more comfortable using the devices personally. That lends us to this third one here, which is important about acknowledging where teachers are in their comfort level. And so what do we need to do to build up their competencies and their capacities? One action item might be a mentoring program. So just like we had 22% of teachers who said they were very comfortable nationwide using these devices, if that number holds within your district, that means 1 out of 5 of your teachers might be good mentors about how to use the mobile devices effectively. In terms of professional development, I mentioned it before, interest in PD is a good sign of readiness. So identifying high quality PD that supports the teacher's existing interests in areas in terms of what are the most appropriate methodologies would be an important action item coming out of this analysis of the data. So again, the data to information equals knowledge process is about translating data into information, aligning that to your goals, and then creating action plans that are based on that, hopefully to inform better decisions and your plans. Now, I gave you a teacher scenario here. I know many of you that are with us today had students that participated, you had parents that participated, you had administrators at different levels. The formula, the process is exactly the same. It starts with identifying your goals and then walks through the identification of which types of data or which questions are most impactful for you. So again, I encourage you, give it a try. You'll see in my homework assignment for you. Give it a try, see how it works. We'd love to hear from you and see how this works for you. I will be honest with you. Some districts would rather contract with us to do that for you. We do that on a cost basis where we will bill you the cost of our time to do that. We do that. I would love to be able to say that my preference, however, is that you build up your capacity to be able to use this, because I gave you one little scenario here and you could take all the different questions in the Speak Up data set and align those to your different goals and be able to really have a wealth of leadership capacity and data to use to inform your decisions. Okay, I promised you this new thing, so I want to go through this. So if you only have 20 minutes to review your Speak Up data, what are some key questions to look at today? A couple caveats as we get started. It's all about your goals. So I'm going to give you some questions here that I think are important. You may look at them and say, well, that's not important for us. Well, then skip that question. You don't need to look at that question if you don't want to. So be thinking about, what do you want to know? What do you want to validate? Which audiences are most important? As I've said a couple times, your mileage may differ. So pay attention to the comparative data. It can really be fascinating to be able to have a state level or national perspective to give you that context around your answer. Okay, folks, there's no silver bullet here. I'm sorry to tell you that. The data will inform, but it will not lead your decisions. That's your job, is to really take that data, to interpret it, to translate it, and then to use it for your leadership. Participation numbers matter. They definitely do. Folks will often say to me, well, how many participants do I need to have to make sure that my data is statistically significant? That is a question that is very, very hard to answer without knowing exactly what your demographics are, what your spread is in terms of teachers' years of experience, what your family income spreads are. All of those things are much more complicated. I have a couple general rules that I look at when I look at data. For most audiences, I will take a look and say if it is somewhere between 60 to 100 participants, that may be a good set of data for you to take a look at. If you really want to base decisions on it, I would definitely recommend having over 100 participants in whatever audience that might be. But again, it varies a lot. So I don't want you to walk away going, well, Julie said I had to have 60 in this group to have it be relevant. It may not be. There still may be things that you glean from that. So don't throw away that data. It just very much varies. And of course, we're here to provide additional support. So here we go, folks. Keeping in mind the 5 different ways that folks use their Speak Up data. If you are looking at student data, and I pulled specifically for grades 6 to 12, and I don't think I set it up front, but maybe it came in the email. We are sending you this presentation, so you will have all of this. You don't need to take a screen capture or write any of these down at this point. Here are the types of questions that I think are the high impact questions that if I was a district leader and I only had 20 minutes to look at my Speak Up data from the students, these would be the 9 that I would look at. You know, what do students say are the obstacles to using technology at school? How do they say they're using those mobile devices for learning? Question 9 and question 23 are companion questions about students' experiences. They have to do with school climate. They have to do with what students are thinking about. It's very much an attitudinal aspiration question, both 9 and 23. We ask all the respondents variation on question 11 from the student survey. What is your vision for the ultimate school? I'm going to share some of that data with you in a moment. The valuation of technology use for learning, how you're using technology outside of school for learning. Question 25 is about online behavior, student safety, some of the dangerous things that students are coming across. And then question 27 is a question we've been asking for the last 2 years. I think it's a really important question for school and district leaders to take a look at if you have polled students. That's where we ask students about how likely it is that teachers and administrators at their schools are interested in their opinions about how to improve school. It's a student agency question that's really important. So a number of different things here. Take a look at this in your own data. If you polled students, see what ones are most important for you. But there's a lot, you know, I love all the questions that are on there, of course. But if you only have a limited period of time, these would be a good place to start. For parents, similar number of questions here. We ask parents, what worries do you have about your child's future? It's a good companion question to question 5 and 6. What workplace skills are most important for students to develop? What's the best way to develop those skills? This gets to the heart of what parents want out of their child's school. And so understanding that from your parent community is worth its weight in gold. We ask parents to value the role of technology use in school. That's an important question, particularly with so many conversations around too much screen time for students. How much do parents value technology use in school is an important validation or foundational question for you. But going along with that, what are the concerns about technology use at your child's school? That's question 9. And then question 27 is concerns about students' online behaviors, inappropriate or appropriate in general. So those are nice tag questions as well. We also ask parents about the value of technology use for learning at their school. How do they interpret the outcomes of digital learning? And then there's your, what's your vision for the ultimate school? Again, the parent version. And then the one I shared with you, the efficacy of various communication tools. I think that's really important, it has to do with engagement as well as communications. And then from teachers. So I just gave you students, parents, and teachers here as that looked like what most of you had covered in your participation. For teachers, one additional question here, there's actually 10 on this list. How are you using technology in your class to support student learning? The companion to that is question 6. How are you using technology in your class to support your professional tasks? That gives you a good understanding as to where teachers are in their sophistication level. If they are not using technology to support their own professional tasks, we usually consider that a fairly low level of sophistication. Their comfort with new instructional models. That's a really important question. It gives you good insight into not just around technology, but things such as project-based learning, differentiated learning, social emotional learning. What types of instructional goals are driving the technology use in the classroom? That's based on Marzano. So that question's a really nice question if you want to start laying out where your teachers are on the Marzano pyramid. There's the question that we asked, question 17. What do you need to use technology more effectively? We did that in our little vignette here a moment ago. What's your vision for the ultimate school? That's the companion to the question that we ask parents as well as students. We ask other audiences that question as well. And then 19 and 20 are the outcomes questions for the teachers. So what's the impact of technology use in your classroom on your students' learning? And what's the impact of technology on your own professional efficacy? Quite often, teachers are asked about the impact on their students' learning, but not on their own efficacy. It's important to look at 19 and 21 together. They give you, again, a much more complete picture here. So you can see for all the different questions, I chose for you questions that are activities questions, attitudes questions, and also aspiration questions, because I know that you're all going to want to triangulate all that data just the way we've been talking about it. But if you only have a moment to look at one question on the Speak Up survey, or you want to pay extra attention, I have built entire workshops around this one question. And it's the question I had just shared on all three of the 20-minute lists. Imagine you're designing a dream school for today's students. What tools hold the greatest potential to increase student achievement and success? It's an aspirational question. It gets to wish list. It's about dream. It's about ultimate school. It's asked across all of the audiences. If you are a technology leader, you have this question. If you're a community member, you have this question. A principal, a librarian, a teacher, a parent, a student at all grades. Everyone gets this question. It's asked every year on the Speak Up survey. So it's a foundational question. It's an important question for a couple of different reasons. Notably, it gives you the opportunity to assess if you have a shared vision for digital learning, if your vision is well communicated to all stakeholders, and where there are needs. So what I did here is I pulled the national data for this question across, looks like 9 different types of technologies or instructional models or digital tools. We poll on about 15. These are 9. And I pulled data from middle school students, school principals, parents, and teachers. Remember, we poll across everybody, but these are the ones that I chose for you right here. So we can look at this and we can pretty quickly assess a couple things. Where are people on the same page? Did the different audiences have a similar response to this idea of what tools hold the greatest potential? And where do they not? So let me show you a not example, and then I think you will get the value. So games. So these are digital video online games. Students love them. We know that. 63% of middle school students said, absolutely, games should be an essential part of my ultimate school. I want it in my dream school. I think it's going to drive achievement. When I do focus groups on games, and I'm doing a lot of that these days, the students are very good at articulating out where their learning outcomes are when they have the opportunity through trial and error to work with different types of games. Teachers increasingly are very interested in games. And in fact, on that question about teacher professional development, games has been right up near the top for just the last 2 or 3 years. Teachers want to understand better how to integrate games within their environment. Principals are coming on board as well, less so than teachers, obviously less than students. But take a look at where parents are. Parents are the gray bar here, folks. Parents, it's under 20%. I think the number this year was 19% of parents said they would endorse the role of games within the learning environment. The reason that number is so low is that parents don't understand educational games. If I was a district superintendent and I was going out to my community and I was super excited about sharing the fact that we were going to implement a game-based environment to help students with improve their math skills. And we brought in some of the very fine product that is out there in the marketplace today, some really leading edge, adaptive technology type product. I would have to, after looking at this data, I would think twice about making that as a big communications announcement to my parent community, because the parent community is not going to receive it well because they don't understand educational games. In my focus groups with parents, parents tell me when they hear that their students are playing games in class, their mind goes to one of 2 places. 1, it's a lazy teacher. 2, how does World of Warcraft help my child develop math skills or whatever skills it might be? This is why this data can be really effective to helping identify where there are gaps that need either better articulation of the vision or an education process for our stakeholders, or to understand what are some potential vulnerabilities you have before you make these type of public announcements. I love this particular question for the value that it brings. And again, you have in your data the opportunity to lay all of these same responses side by side, exactly the same way I did, and create that snapshot for your district as to where there is commonality, where there is universality, where there is a common vision going forward. Now, you may go through this and say, okay, well, this makes tons of sense in our district because we've done a big initiative around online textbooks and we did a lot of parent engagement and parent education. And so that's where I understand where our data is coming from. Or it could be about your mobile app, or maybe you're implementing online classes for students and you'll see your numbers will differ. So this is an important question, I think, for, in a very quick and easy way, understanding the value of Speak Up, because it gives you this comparative data set, and you can also compare this within your district, school by school. You can compare it to your state data, you can compare it to national data, and you can have an understanding of where your district is, either in the adoption of technology or in the adaptation of your vision. Okay, your turn to dive in. Now, if we were in the full workshop, we would start doing the data, but instead I'm going to give you some homework. What I would say is if you want to take this sort of baby steps, step by step, identify a particular goal, pick up the right data that you think is most important, play with the idea of translating that data into information statements and deriving your action items out of it. But don't work in a vacuum. Bring others into your analysis. It might be the rest of your team. It might be some of your principals. It might be a good opportunity even to bring students into this conversation and see what they see in the data. Again, if you have some more questions or need some help, go ahead and contact us. I'd also love to know how you did in your homework. I'm not asking you to send it in. I would love to know how this worked with you. Okay, before we get to questions, I just want to take you through a couple other ways that we can support your efforts, and then we'll open it up and see if we have some questions or your comments, your thoughts, whatever it might be. Now, Jenny has done a lot of work in providing you with data templates to help you with data organization and usage. I took just a snapshot here from tomorrow.org where you can take a look at the Excel templates we've put together and also the master thematic template if you want to drop your data into some of these templates to help you with organization. She's also created a really good little short video. It's posted up on our YouTube channel where you can take a look at that to understand how to use that. You all know already that Jenny is just waiting for your call to be able to help you at any time once you've taken a look at some of this. So please, if you have any additional questions, contact Jenny. If you have any trouble getting to your data, or if you're a district and you're having trouble understanding how do I do this, the school side by side, Jenny can very quickly point you in the right direction. If you want, the 50,000 foot level reports or infographics that are available, please, of course, you should already know that tomorrow.org can be a wonderful resource for you. This is the report that we released in June about education equity. In September on education equity. This is beyond the homework gap. It talks about the equity of digital learning experiences school-wide. So I think it's a great report. I hope that if you haven't already taken a look at it, it can really stimulate some interesting conversations within your schools and districts. And of course, we try and be very good about putting up all of our presentations, webinars, and all of that on our website so that you have as a resource. Now, if you want some additional support, we do offer some consulting and workshop services that we can provide. Those are on a contracted basis. I've already mentioned a couple times the expanded version of today's seminar, a workshop exclusively in your school or district. We would be using your own data. You would bring as many people to the table as you want. We can actually work through that. We also can do additional analytics performed on your data if you are interested in that. Quite often folks want to see some of the ways that we're disaggregating the data, and they might want to do it themselves. And may have the opportunity to do it themselves, or they might want us to do it for them. So that might be, for example, on your teacher data, looking at years of experience, students disaggregating by gender, whatever it might be. We also have worked with some school districts to create from their data a recommended list of actions from our analysis of their data. So that's where we go through our process, looking at your data, and then we come up with a recommended list of actions. Some folks want that then formalized into a narrative report. We can also do that, or to present to the district team. So I have gone into districts, presented to cabinet, presented to the instructional technology team, presented to community groups, presented to planning groups within districts or communities. There's Speak Up data. There's lots of different things that we can do with that if you are interested. We also offer a couple other different types of workshops that we're kind of excited about. There's one that I've been doing about messaging and metrics. It's about how to balance out your digital vision, how to articulate your digital vision with this new era where parents are increasingly concerned about too much screen time. So how are we evaluating that, and how are we messaging that out to our community? That's another workshop that we do, again, very focused in on your own needs. And then another one around communications for effective leadership. So if you're interested in any of those are additional services that we can provide. You can contact me directly, of course. And just as you know already, Speak Up is still open. Since we made the big announcement in January that Speak Up would be open on a year-long basis, we have kept this year's Speak Up open through the end of June. So you may start looking at your data. We've had a couple districts that have told us this. You may start looking at your data and realize, oh gosh, I should have polled, fill in the blank, this audience. You still have time to do it if you want. So just know that that is still available for you. Okay. With that, I'm going to stop talking here at this moment. I'm going to see if we have any questions. So if anyone has anything that they would like to ask or have a question, I don't know if we can open up, I don't know if we have the ability to open up the microphones for everybody that are here with us today. So I don't know if your questions have to come, I don't know if your questions have to come in through the chat box, or if you can, we can unmute your mics, or you can unmute your mics. I'm not sure.
Julie, this is Rachel.
Oh, hi, Rachel.
Hi. I was wondering, this was our first year doing the Speak Up survey, and we selected the Mobile Learning Impact Snapshot survey. And as you're talking, I realized that we're missing, you gave the example with question 17. We don't have any data like that from the Mobile Impact Snapshot. Is there a possibility for question 17 to be added to next year's national survey as like a key piece of that, or should we be looking at maybe doing a second survey that would include that question? I don't want to over survey.
No, I know.
But I feel like I missed a key component there.
No, that's very good feedback, Rachel. You know that the snapshots, this was the first year we did snapshots, and we did the mobile learning one for teachers and students, and then we did the professional development one specifically for teachers. So this was our first time doing it, but I think that you make a very, very good point. That question 17, I'm glad you like it, or I'm interpreting that you like it.
Yes. So there was a mobile, we did the mobile snapshot teacher and the mobile snapshot student. There was a third one.
Yeah. There was a third one that was professional development for teachers. So it was just professional development for teachers.
Okay.
And what we saw is that folks either did they either walked down the mobile road or they walked down the professional development road. So we will take a note, because I think you're absolutely right. I think that question 17 would be a great add to the mobile learning snapshot for teachers for next year. So we'll take that as an action item to add that one on.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else have any other questions? Let me check my chat box here kind of quickly, and we'll see. I don't think so. Hey, if anyone else has anything else they want to share, you can jump right in. And you can stop me. In the meantime, I just want to give you a couple of hints about Speak Up 2019-20. I know you're just getting into your data now, but just so that you know, it is appropriate if you want to start planning. The surveys will be open from August next year. So remember, that was our big announcement, is that they're open all year long. We will taking off a slice of that for our national data, and those dates will come out later, but the surveys will be open. And this gives you the opportunity to participate when it makes sense for you, participate as often as you want. So in talking to some districts, folks are talking about polling students in the fall, parents in the winter, teachers in the you get the opportunity to come up with your own schedule for that. And of course, there are now 3 different formats. There's Speak Up 360, which is what we're calling the comprehensive multi-topic surveys for all your different stakeholders. The Speak Up snapshots, that's what Rachel was just talking about. Those are the shorter thematic surveys for specific audiences. And then we'll be running periodically these Speak Up Flash indicators, which are more quick 5-question polls on very targeted topics. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? Those will run throughout the year at different times. So you can start thinking about, I always tell people, start thinking about what audiences you want to poll, what sort of information you want to collect. We'll be coming out into the field probably in June with information about what will be covered on the survey so that you can start making those plans accordingly. Folks, it has been wonderful having you with us today. I felt like I gave you, I sort of was a steady stream of teaching today without much interactivity. But again, this was our idea, was to sort of give you a little bit of a taste of this so you can have some ideas. We are always interested in your feedback. And so if you would share with us, hopefully this was helpful to you, but we would love to know if there was something more that we could do to help you understand how to use your Speak Up data more effectively. And of course, if you need help, you know where to reach us. So thank you so much for coming today, folks. Oh, I see, maybe it's another question, or maybe it's just a message. My friend Ken says thanks. Thanks, Ken. Great having you here. Wonderful having all of you here. We're going to go ahead and sign off, folks, but please know that we are waiting to help you in any way that we can. So please be in touch. Thanks a lot, folks. Take care.